I see the devastating effects in my patients. As a as someone who's done almost 30,000 general anesthetics in this part by this time in my career, I've seen that it takes much more propofol, especially in some patients. It takes 3 to 4 times more propofol, and we didn't understand why that was happening. About 10 years ago, we started seeing that, and it was mostly happening in young people, but not exclusively. And so when we started looking into it, we saw that it was happening in marijuana users. And we also saw that they were having more anxiety, and they were taking a lot more postoperative pain medication, about 60% more postoperative pain medication.
Dr. Raymond Wiggins is a licensed physician who's performed general anesthetics on over 30,000 patients. You could say he knows a bit about drugs and how they interact with our bodies. Dr. Wiggins' new book, Weeding Out the Myths About Marijuana, focuses on marijuana use and its impact on our minds and overall health. What got Dr. Wiggins interested in all this? A very personal story. Raymond, welcome to Bump in the Road. If you would, tell us your story.
Well, I'm from a large family, and both sides of my family have had substance abuse issues, significant. I half jokingly, only half so jokingly, say that my family members are either drug dealers or they're ministers. My great grandfather and my great uncle both died as alcoholics. Many of my uncles and aunts and cousins, still today, some of them are addicted to drugs and alcohol. And unfortunately, I've witnessed the devastating effects of marijuana in their lives, even leading to premature death in some. And I have no doubt that 3 of my cousins who are no longer with us would be alive today uh, if not for heavy marijuana use. One died of a sudden heart attack after 30 years of heavy use. 2 others started with marijuana, but they moved on to other drugs. So I've seen firsthand that marijuana is a gateway drug in these young people. And then a few years ago, really the thing that really started me looking into this much more, a young man who is a very close family member of mine, a great young man, was headed in the right direction. He graduated from high school and went to college in College Station with a friend of his that he had grown up with, and they had gone to church together. They were just tremendous young men. They became roommates, and they got in with a group of guys who were smoking marijuana. And these guys said, "Hey, come smoke it with us." And they thought, "Hey, these guys seem to be doing okay. No one seems to be having any problems." So they said, "Hey, why not?" And so they started smoking it. And the second time they did this, this young relative of mine had a severe psychotic episode. He thought people were chasing him. He was displaying extremely bizarre behavior. He didn't know his own identity, and his friends wound up uh, the calling EMS, and he was transported to a psychiatric hospital. And doctors there told our family that he may never be the same. Eventually, he was released, but unfortunately, he couldn't finish the semester, and he was never able to return to school. And those are just a few of the many stories I could tell you of people I know and love who have had their lives devastated or cut short by marijuana. And there's also a professional side too. I see the devastating effects in my patients. As a uh, as someone who's done almost 30,000 general anesthetics in this part by this time in my career, I've seen that it takes much more propofol, especially in some patients. It takes 3 to 4 times more propofol, and we didn't understand why that was happening. About 10 years ago, we started seeing that, and it was mostly happening in young people, but not exclusively. And so when we started looking into it, we saw that it was happening in marijuana users. And we also saw that they were having more anxiety, and they were taking a lot more postoperative pain medication, about 60% more postoperative pain medication. So the professional side and the personal side, I started looking into this, and I found that really what I was hearing from pop culture and much of the media just simply wasn't true. Marijuana is not a benign drug. There's many complications that can happen because of it, and so I started talking about it, and I saw that it really resonated with a lot of people. People that you would never imagine struggle with this drug, either personally or they have family members who struggle with it. And then that led me to write several books, and I'm so glad that I did because it's really helped countless people. So my tragedies or family tragedies or bumps in the road have really been something that ultimately has wound up helping others.
Boy, that those are stunning stories about, marijuana's impact on people. Does that hold what sort of statistics do you see across the general population
The number of people that use,
that use and the number of people out of that group that have had problems, or do we have any data on that?
we have lots of data there. In fact, I have over 500 peer-reviewed articles in my book. But one statistic that is 30% of people who use marijuana, according to the FDA, are addicted. And if you're looking at young people, that's 46%. So almost one third of people who use marijuana are addicted or have cannabis use disorder, it's called. Um, and almost one half of our young people who use are addicted. If you're looking at overall statistics, the number of people that use, if you go back to 2010, about 7% of people had used in the past year. You fast forward to 2022, and that was 22%. So in only 12 years, the use of marijuana uh, more than tripled during that time, and it's continuing to go up. Actually, I just came back from a conference, and it looks like the it may be plateauing a little bit. So we're very hopeful that this trend that's been happening for the past 15 years or so, really 25 years, it started going up around the turn of the century, but especially the past 15 years, it's been going up. But I think it's about to plateau here, according to what we're seeing.
But it's painted as such a benign drug.
It is, and that's very unfortunate. If you look at the physical effects, there's problems with the brain. There's decreased IQ. There's a decrease in IQ of somewhere between 3 to 9 points, depending on the study that you look at. But the biggest study, the most quoted study, is an 8 point drop in IQ over a lifetime. That may not sound a lot like a lot, but uh, it's the average marijuana user, regular user, um, has an IQ below about 70% of their peers, and there are so many problems that it causes with the brain, with the heart, with the lungs, with the immune system, and then when you move over to mental health. There are so many problems. There's problems with depression and anxiety disorder and psychosis, including schizophrenia. There's problems with personality disorders, and there's also, of course, cannabis use disorder or substance use disorders. And so there's also violence. And we think of marijuana as leading to less violence, but studies actually show that marijuana leads to much more violence. It leads to a doubling of domestic violence. It leads to about a 45% increase in perpetrating dating violence, and it leads to about a 54% increase in being the victim of dating violence. So you can just go on and on. There are so many statistics that show that it doesn't lead to a better life. You're 50% more likely to lose your job if you're a marijuana user. So it's just not something that's a benign drug. It's not the drug that it's painted to be in social media and in much of the media, and definitely in pop culture. It's just not benign.
For people who are addicted, what is getting off of marijuana difficult?
It can be. And there's no one right way to do it. I will say probably the biggest thing that I could tell anyone, if you're addicted and you're having difficulty stopping, don't try to do it on your own. That seems to be a way that people fail. Get other people involved. If you're a minor, definitely go to your parents. Go to people who who you trust, your teachers at school, other administrators at school. If you're uh, a person who goes to church, you can go to a youth pastor, a pastor. A lot of these people will have great resources. They're not necessarily going to help you themselves, but they can give you great resources. And if you go to drwiggins.com, drwiggins.com, I have a resources page there, and I have many places that you can go to that will help you get off of this drug.
Before we came on, we were talking about how marijuana stimulates a dopamine reaction. Let's talk about that a little bit because I think that's an important piece of this equation.
Well, marijuana acts directly on what we call cannabinoid receptors, and those receptors are in the brain. The CB1 receptors are mainly in the brain. The CB2 receptors are in the brain, but they're also all over the body. And those receptors are something that are activated by marijuana directly. We truly don't even understand how this works ultimately, but we do know that there is a huge release of dopamine in people who smoke marijuana or who use it in edibles, etc. There's a really large hit of dopamine. Ultimately, is the reason that you feel good, because dopamine is the pleasure chemical of the body, and this dopamine release, whenever you come down from marijuana, now you have less dopamine. So you have a whole lot of dopamine less, a lot of dopamine less, and over time, especially, and it really doesn't take that long. Your body stops making as much dopamine because it thinks, "Hey, I have too much dopamine," so it reduces the amount that you produce, and it reduces the sensitivity of your body to dopamine, of your brain. And so now you need that extra stimulation from marijuana or other drugs to have a normal amount of dopamine. And what this does is this leads to addiction. It leads to a lot of mental health issues such as depression and psychosis, especially those two, but many more. And so dopamine is a huge reason uh, that marijuana is not a good thing, because overall, eventually it's going to reduce the amount of dopamine that you have, and reduce your sensitivity to it.
If you get off marijuana, does your dopamine sensitivity eventually come back or is it permanently shut?
That's a good question. What I will tell you is there are many studies, and I've been looking at these. I put many of them in my books, but I've been looking at a lot of these recently. Um, when you use marijuana, you're causing depression. Someone who uses marijuana as a 12 to 17-year-old will have much more depression in their 30s. Uh, those who use marijuana will have much more anxiety into their 30s and 40s. And we only have followed these people into their 30s and 40s. This study is going to follow people throughout their lives. So now, that these people are getting into their 40s, we're starting to see it into the 40s as well. So we don't know if this is lifelong, but we do know that it lasts at least into the 30s and early 40s. And psychosis is the same issue. You have more psychosis down the road when you use marijuana as a young person, especially before the age of 21. But using after the age of 21 doesn't exempt you from these issues. It's just not quite as significant from what we're finding at this point.
We were talking before we came on about how we're a society addicted to dopamine hits. I mean, look at
Yeah.
social media, how many likes, how many follows, the whole thing. Marijuana, a million different things. I think as a society, we need a major detox.
I completely agree with you. I am on social media a lot. I try to, I'm mainly posting. I have many different social media platforms that I'm on, but I'm guilty of it too. I go to post, and all of a sudden I see something, and I want to follow that, and then all of a sudden, 10 minutes later, I think I need to be posting. I don't need to be scrolling here. It's those dopamine hits. It's really addictive.
Oh, I think we all go down rabbit holes on social media. It's almost hard to avoid. I actually started limiting the amount of reading. I usually read a lot of news and whatnot in the morning. I
Hmm.
have started limiting it because otherwise it could consume half my day.
It
And
can.
the other piece of it that I personally don't care for is I think it reduces our ability to really be present and go deep in terms of our attention span. And for me, I'm lucky I have people on the show who are authors, so I read their books, but I have always been a big reader. And over the years now, I've consciously cultivated that so that I can have an extended attention span. I've seen it erode interfacing with all these with social media and other things. That's not where I want to be in my life.
Couldn't agree with you more. I do my best not to spend too much time on social media. I try to read a lot. I do read a lot. I don't watch much TV,
Yep.
and I haven't for many years at this point. I just want to do things that will make my brain healthier and allow me to be able to think better. And that attention span that you talked about is a big deal.
I think it is. And as I get older, cultivating a responsive brain is even more important. I'm at that age where a lot of people are retiring, and they don't really have any goals or purpose with their lives other than to just enjoy themselves, and that's fine. Fine. Excuse me. But I actually think this period of time is an incredible opportunity to pursue the things you've always wanted to pursue, to go into something new, and to really develop another aspect of yourself that maybe you couldn't while you were working.
And that's what I'm doing at this point. I'm not at the end of my career. I still have some younger children. I have older children, but I have younger children as well. And so I'll be working for many more years. But as I'm coming towards the end of my career,
Mhm.
uh, this that I'm doing, talking about marijuana, doing many interviews, writing books, etc. This has been something that has really captivated me, and I hope that I'm able to do this for the rest of my life because just yesterday I was able to speak somewhere, and countless people during the time that I was speaking and after the time that I was speaking let me know how much what I was saying was really helping them and their family. So it's just it's something that really helps me know that I'm doing something that's good to help humanity.
What are the arguments for using marijuana?
Well, a lot of people talk about medical marijuana and they talk about the benefits of medical marijuana. Unfortunately, the things that are out there that you hear in pop culture, when you start looking at it from a scientific perspective, uh, the FDA hasn't approved marijuana for any use, and that's something that's shocking. That I didn't even understand that as a doctor until I started looking into this. Uh, the FDA has approved four drugs, two that are CBD, uh, very high potency CBD, not THC, not the thing that the main thing that in marijuana that causes the mental changes. Uh, but they're made from CBD, and what they are is they're used for um, very rare types of seizures in children, not in adults, but in children. And these types of seizures, we're talking about very few people in all of the United States have these types of seizures. But those two drugs are made for that. Then there's two other drugs that are similar to THC. They're not THC, they're not marijuana, but they're synthetic versions that help with appetite stimulation. And so those four drugs have been approved by the FDA. Nothing else that you hear about, whether it's MS, whether it's Hodgkin's disease, or other types of cancers, uh, all of the other things that you hear about, even sleep and anxiety, those things. Yes, marijuana will help you sleep. It'll help you go to sleep, but after you go to sleep, then you don't go into REM sleep. So it's as if you didn't rest, you didn't sleep all night because you don't go into REM sleep. So, and even going to sleep, you have to use more and more to go to sleep. And anxiety, yes, while you're using, you may be a little less anxious, but that's not everyone. Some people, even while they're using, have more anxiety. But definitely, when you come down, you're going to have more anxiety. And so, again, there is nothing about marijuana. There is nothing that the FDA has approved it for. Um, there is nothing that it's good for as far as medical marijuana. And in my opinion, it's just to gain to help recreational marijuana be used and become legalized. It's not something that really, if you look at the scientific data, that it's really good for anything.
And interestingly, on the legalization front, the pitch was that it would produce all this revenue, and that has totally failed in every instance, hasn't it?
It has. Um, in Colorado, the amount of revenue that they bring in is 0.85% of their budget, and unfortunately, if you look at society in general and you look at how much governments and other NGOs, et cetera, are having to spend for every dollar that's brought in, it's almost $4.50 that is spent to mitigate the effects, the negative effects. Most of that is spent on healthcare and ER visits, et cetera. Some for education, but there's a lot of problems that are caused by marijuana that negate and more than negate the effects of the amount that's being brought in.
You know, you bring up the topic of anxiety, and that seems to be omnipresent in society these days. People are so anxious. What is this about?
Well, why are people more anxious? That's a really good question. That's probably honestly a little above my pay grade here. If you want my honest opinion there, I think that there's a lot of reasons, but I think one reason is that we've gotten away from God, and you may not want me to say that there, and if you want to cut that out, you can. But
Oh,
I,
no,
I
not
think
at
that's
all.
I think that's a big reason. If you look at cities that are less churched, those are cities that statistically have the most anxiety. Cities like Portland, Seattle, et cetera. Um, so that's I think that's a reason. Another reason is that the use of marijuana has risen rapidly, and that has caused a lot of anxiety, especially in our young people. It causes a 92% increase. There's a large study that shows a 92% increase overall in generalized anxiety disorders among people who use marijuana.
Wow.
So almost a doubling. And so with the rapid expansion and the rapid, so many more people using marijuana, I think that's a big reason for that as well.
I think the anxiety that people talk about too is partly fear driven, and it's partly because they live from the outside in, not the inside out. And that is they're reactive to every little thing that comes along, and the world is always falling apart. The Chicken Little story. And I I personally have always thought we should teach meditation in schools. We need to teach people how to get control of their reactions and their minds because you want your reaction to be truly yours, not one that's instilled in you.
I agree with you that we want to live from the inside out and not the outside in. Don't be reactive to everything. Learn how to uh, control the environment that's around you as much as you can, and the more you're able to control your reactions to it, etc., it's going to help you a lot.
Where do you think marijuana is going to go in our future? Is the usage going to start to decline, or do you think we're just going to plateau?
Well, thankfully, the conference that I just got back from was talking about that, and it looks like we're seeing a plateau, and we're hoping that the next time we see the statistics, that it'll be a decline. There are just recently a lot of the amendments that were supposed to be legalizing marijuana failed up until the past year or so. Almost everything that's been out there that's been put forth has been approved. But this past year, people were really standing up against it on both sides of the aisle. and it helped those amendments to fail, like Florida Amendment 3. Even though the cannabis industry, just one company put over $100 million into Florida
Wow.
Amendment 3, it failed. And so I'm thankful for that. And hopefully that's something that we're going to see in the future.
You brought this up before we went live too, that this is a very bipartisan issue.
Extremely bipartisan issue. A lot of people think that, the red states are against it and the blue states are for it, and politicians that are on the Democratic side are for it, and Republicans are against it. That is not the case at all. The gentleman who is over the organization for where I just went and spoke, and was able to hear so many good speakers, is Dr. Kevin Sabet, and he worked for Clinton, he worked for W. Bush, and then he worked for Obama. He's been on both sides of the aisle. And this conference that I went to, there were people. I would say it was pretty evenly split. Uh, there were a lot of politicians. There were a lot of people who speak about this. A lot of scientists, and they were across the aisle. I mean, on both sides of the aisle, and so I was very happy to see that.
How can people go about making a difference in their local communities?
I would say there's a group called SAM, uh, Sensible Approaches to Marijuana, and they have state chapters, and that's one thing that you could do. And there are so many other organizations. Uh, there's a Parents Action Network. There's so many different ones. In fact, I have links to some of them uh, on my website again, that will help you learn which organizations are uh, helping people not start drugs and get off of drugs. Um, so there's many organizations that you could be a part of, and educating yourself too. There, if you'll educate yourself, you're somewhere between 6 and 22 times less likely to use, and you can help many other people uh, not to start as well.
Your recent book, its name again?
Weeding out the myths about marijuana, and
And that's available on Amazon?
it's available everywhere books are sold. But yes, it's absolutely available on Amazon, and it just came out on Audible. One of the editions is out now. The expanded edition, the other edition, the standard edition, will be out hopefully within a few weeks.
And want to give people a quick overview of your book because it's a terrific book.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I talk about the many different problems that marijuana causes, and I just go through and I talk about uh, violence. I talk about crime and organized crime. I talk about automobile accidents, the increase, and by the way, there were 9,400 over 9,400 fatal auto accidents directly due to marijuana in 2022, and that has gone up every year. I talk about the medical issues, and I talk about the mental health issues, and then I go into things like medical marijuana. Is it a gateway drug? I talk about all the things that you hear in society about it, and I try to answer all of those questions for you. And if you get the expanded edition, there is a biblical side as well. There's a spiritual side there as well. If you get that, if you just want the strictly secular version, the standard edition is the one for you.